Your thoughts are the internal soundtracks you live by. If you don't control them, they'll control you. Jon Acuff, Soundtracks. What if the biggest thing holding you back isn't your schedule, your skills, or your circumstances? What if it's your thinking? Every day, we each carry a loop of thoughts that play in the background, like a personal soundtrack. They influence how we feel, how we act, and what we believe is possible. Some of these soundtracks are helpful, but many are not. They whisper things like, "You're not ready. You always mess this up. Why even try?" These aren't just passing thoughts. They become the mental script for our lives. But here's the good news. You can rewrite that script. Soundtracks by Jon Acuff is a practical guide for anyone who wants to stop overthinking and start choosing thoughts that create momentum, not anxiety. Welcome to Book Play, where we turn powerful books into powerful life changes. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like the video and subscribe so you never miss a life-changing lesson from the books that can transform your mindset. In this episode, you'll meet Robert, a smart, driven young professional who looks like he's succeeding, but quietly struggles with self-doubt and overthinking. Through his journey, we'll explore 5 powerful lessons from soundtracks and how they can help you change your thoughts and change your life. Let's get started. Robert is 28. He's a UX designer working for a well-known startup, one of those fast-moving, high-expectation workplaces where you're either thriving or falling behind. From the outside, Robert seems like someone who's doing just fine. Polite, competent, responsible, a good team player. He meets deadlines, contributes in meetings, and stays out of drama. People say, "You're solid." And Robert nods, smiles, and silently agrees. But the truth is more complicated, because inside, Robert is exhausted. Not physically, he sleeps enough, eats fairly well, and keeps up a decent workout routine. But mentally, he's tired in a way that rest doesn't fix. It's the thinking, endless thinking, about every decision, every word he says, every moment he doesn't get right. In the morning, as soon as his alarm goes off, his brain begins, "You didn't finish that presentation. You were too quiet yesterday. They probably noticed. You need to do more today. You need to prove yourself again." These thoughts aren't dramatic or loud. They're quiet, familiar. That's what makes them so convincing. They've been there for years. Robert can't remember the last time he worked on something without overanalyzing it afterward, whether it's an email, a project, or just a casual comment in Slack. Everything gets mentally reviewed, judged, and second-guessed. He's never been called anxious, but he over-prepares for every task. He triple-checks his work. He edits his sentences, even in text messages, because underneath it all, there's a constant fear. What if I'm not enough? At the office, this makes him look thorough, but in his mind, it's like walking through water. Nothing ever feels finished. Nothing ever feels safe. He tells himself it's just ambition or discipline, but it doesn't feel like growth. It feels like pressure, and it's slowly taking the joy out of everything. Weekends don't help. Even when he has time off, the soundtrack plays on repeat. You should be using this time better. You haven't made progress on that side project. You said you'd start something this year. Why haven't you? Robert often dreams of doing more, starting a podcast, building something of his own, speaking at a design event. But he rarely takes the first step, because every time he tries, the voice comes back stronger. You're not ready. You'll mess it up. People will notice you're not as good as they think. And so he waits, not because he lacks ideas, but because his thoughts won't let him move. Until one night, something different happens. It's late, nearly midnight. He's lying on the couch, phone in hand, absent-mindedly scrolling through social media. He's not even sure what he's looking for, just trying to feel something. Then a video catches his attention. a man is speaking calmly to the camera. Overthinking isn't a personality trait. It's just a habit. It's a soundtrack. And the good news? You can change it. Robert blinks, rewinds, plays it again. Something about those words lands hard. A soundtrack? Not who I am, but something I've been listening to? He looks at the caption. The speaker is Jon Acuff. The book is called Soundtracks. Robert clicks the link, not quite knowing why. Maybe it's curiosity. Maybe it's desperation. Within minutes, he's downloaded the audiobook. He doesn't tell anyone. He just starts listening. And something happens. Not a breakthrough. Not an overnight transformation, but a quiet shift. In the opening chapters, Jon Acuff describes how most people live their lives following broken soundtracks, repeating thoughts that were never questioned, never challenged. And for the first time, Robert sees it clearly. All the doubt, the hesitation, the spirals. They weren't just part of who he was. They were habits, loops, scripts, soundtracks. He pauses the book, sits in the silence of his apartment, and wonders, what if I've been following the wrong script all along? It's not a fix, but it's a beginning. He presses play again, and this time listens with something he hasn't felt in a long time: hope. Overthinking isn't a personality flaw, it's a pattern, and patterns can be rewritten. Soundtracks is a book about thinking, but not just any kind of thinking, overthinking. Jon Acuff, the author, defines overthinking in a simple way. It's when your thoughts get in the way of your progress. It's when you spend more time thinking about something than doing something about it. And for many of us, that thinking never stops. In the book, Acuff introduces the idea that our thoughts function like soundtracks, mental loops we play over and over again. Some are positive, motivating and clear. Others are broken, heavy and full of doubt. The problem? Most people don't even realize they're playing these soundtracks. They think it's just their personality. But Acuff makes a powerful argument. Overthinking isn't who you are. It's something you do. And more importantly, it's something you can change. This book doesn't offer vague advice or surface-level motivation. It gives you a process, a tool, a repeatable way to notice your unhelpful thoughts, question them, and replace them with something better. Acuff calls it the new anthem of your life, learning to create a playlist of thoughts that move you forward, not keep you stuck. The book is structured with clarity and purpose. It walks you through 3 practical steps. 1. Retire the broken soundtracks. 2. Replace them with new ones. 3. Repeat the new ones until they're automatic. The simplicity of the method is what makes it powerful. It's not about ignoring reality. It's about choosing thoughts that are honest, helpful and true, rather than those that are just familiar. Throughout the book, Acuff uses real-life stories, research-backed insights, and a good dose of humor. But beneath it all, the message is serious. If your thoughts shape your life, then changing them is one of the most important things you can do. For Robert, and for many of us, Soundtracks is more than a self-help book. It's a blueprint for changing how we think, so we can finally start moving toward who we're meant to become. Lesson number 1. Your thoughts are soundtracks, and you're the DJ. Robert had always assumed his thoughts were facts. He thought that the voice inside his head, the one that whispered, "You're not enough," or "You'll fail," was telling him the truth. These thoughts felt so real, so ingrained, that they became part of his everyday experience. But when Robert read Jon Acuff's Soundtracks, everything began to change. Acuff introduced a powerful idea. If you listen to any thought long enough, it becomes part of your personal playlist. This was the breakthrough Robert had been waiting for. He started to realize that his thoughts weren't random or inevitable. They were like songs, tracks that had been playing over and over again in his mind. And just like any playlist, these thoughts could be changed. But here's the catch. You're the DJ. You control the playlist. You decide which thoughts make the cut and which ones get removed. Robert began to reflect on the thought patterns he had been playing in his mind for years. The thought of, "You're not good enough," had been on constant repeat, shaping his decisions, holding him back from opportunities. Every time he faced a new challenge, that negative soundtrack would play loud and clear, keeping him stuck. This realization was liberating. He wasn't trapped by his thoughts. They weren't inevitable. They were just habits, and like any habit, they could be changed. For Robert, it started with awareness. He began to notice the thoughts that were limiting him. Whenever a thought like, "You're not good enough," popped up, he didn't just accept it, he challenged it. He began asking himself, is this thought true? Is this thought helpful? Is this thought kind? When Robert asked these questions, he started noticing something powerful. The thoughts weren't true, they weren't kind, and they certainly weren't helpful. So instead of allowing these limiting soundtracks to control him, Robert made a conscious decision to replace them. Instead of hearing, "You're not good enough," he began telling himself, "I am capable of growth. Every challenge is an opportunity to learn." The shift wasn't instant, but over time, with practice, Robert's internal soundtrack began to change. He started to believe the new soundtracks more and more. Every time an old thought crept in, he interrupted it with a new, empowering thought. Slowly, the negative track faded, replaced by a stronger, more supportive playlist. Start paying attention to your thoughts. When you catch yourself in a cycle of negative self-talk, ask these 3 questions. Is this thought true? Is this thought helpful? Is this thought kind? If the answer is no, replace the thought with something more positive and empowering. Over time, you'll notice a shift in your mindset and your life. Your thoughts are like soundtracks, and you're the DJ. The more you consciously choose which thoughts you want to play, the more empowered you become to take control of your mindset and your future. Lesson number 2, silence is not enough. Replace the noise. Once Robert understood that his thoughts were soundtracks, he thought the next step would be easy. All he had to do was silence the negative thoughts, right? Just block them out, ignore them, and everything would be fine. But as he quickly learned, silencing the noise wasn't enough. It's like trying to stop a song from playing by simply turning down the volume. The music is still there, just faint. And when it's not completely gone, it's always in the background, ready to return at any moment. This was the problem Robert faced. He could push the negative thoughts away for a while, but they always came back, often stronger than before. Every time he tried to block out the negativity, it would sneak back into his mind, often louder and more persistent. Acuff introduced an even more important idea. You can't just silence the noise. You have to replace it with something better. Just eliminating the bad soundtracks wasn't enough. In fact, Robert found that if he only tried to silence the negative thoughts, his mind felt empty and unsettled, like a void waiting to be filled. This is where the power of replacement came in. It's not about just removing the negative thoughts. It's about replacing them with something more empowering, something that aligns with your goals and values. For Robert, this idea became clear when he was faced with a project at work. Normally, he would have heard the soundtrack of self-doubt. I'm not skilled enough to handle this. But instead of just silencing that thought, he actively chose a new one. I may not know everything, but I am resourceful. I can learn and adapt. At first, the old soundtrack kept creeping in, and Robert felt like he was fighting an uphill battle. But every time the old thought popped up, he would replace it. Slowly, he realized that by consistently replacing the negativity with something more positive, the positive thoughts began to gain strength. He started seeing the results of this new approach in his daily life. Whether it was handling a tough conversation with a colleague or tackling a challenging project, Robert found that the more he practiced replacing the negative soundtracks, the less power the old ones had. It was like slowly building a new playlist that was more in tune with who he wanted to be. If you're trying to overcome negative self-talk, don't just focus on trying to silence the thoughts. Instead, actively replace them. The next time you hear a negative thought, like "I'm not good enough," consciously replace it with a positive affirmation that helps you move forward, such as "I am capable of growth and learning." The more consistently you replace the old soundtracks with empowering ones, the more natural it will feel to have a mindset that works for you, not against you. Silencing the noise doesn't work if you don't replace it. Replace the negative soundtracks with empowering thoughts, and you'll begin to see a shift in your mindset and actions. Lesson number 3. Repetition is key to new soundtracks. At first, Robert felt a sense of excitement. He had learned that his thoughts were soundtracks, and that he could replace the negative ones with empowering new ones. But there was one problem. The new soundtracks didn't feel natural right away. They didn't stick. Every time he tried to replace a negative thought, it felt like he had to start all over again. That's when Jon Acuff's message about repetition hit home. Acuff explains, "Repetition is the key to rewiring your brain. Positive soundtracks don't stick on their own. You have to keep playing them over and over again until they become a part of who you are." Robert quickly realized that change wasn't going to be instant. It wasn't a one-time fix, and the new soundtracks weren't going to be automatic. To truly change his mindset, he would need to repeat the new empowering soundtracks consistently. This idea of repetition isn't just about saying positive things to yourself once and hoping they work. It's about integrating the new soundtracks into your daily life, playing them on repeat, just like your favorite songs. The more you listen to them, the more they become part of you. For Robert, this meant setting aside time every day to practice his new soundtracks. Whether it was during his morning commute or while preparing dinner, he began repeating his new empowering thoughts out loud. At first, it felt awkward and forced, but over time, something incredible happened. The new soundtracks began to stick. One of Robert's biggest shifts came when he was working on a particularly challenging task at work. In the past, he would have heard the thought, "This is too difficult for me. I'll never succeed." But now he had a new soundtrack. "I am capable of learning and adapting. I can figure this out." At first, it felt like he was just saying words, but as he repeated the new thought over and over, it started to feel more real. It wasn't long before that new soundtrack started to replace the old one entirely. Robert also found that he didn't need to be perfect in his repetition. It wasn't about saying the perfect affirmation every time. It was about consistency. Even on days when he didn't feel like it, even when the negative thoughts tried to sneak back in, Robert made a commitment to repeat the new soundtracks anyway. And over time, this repetition helped him rewire his brain. The more he repeated the empowering soundtracks, the more automatic they became. He didn't have to force himself to think positively anymore. It became his default. Start by repeating your new soundtracks every day. Pick one empowering thought that resonates with you and repeat it regularly. It might feel strange at first, but consistency is key. The more you repeat it, the more it will become a natural part of your thinking. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just keep going. Over time, you'll start noticing that the new, positive soundtracks are replacing the old ones, and it will feel like a natural shift in your mindset. Repetition is crucial for rewiring your mind. The more you repeat your new, empowering soundtracks, the more automatic they become and the stronger they get. Lesson number 4. Self-talk is a skill you can build. By now, Robert had made significant progress. He understood that his thoughts were like soundtracks and that he could replace the negative ones with positive, empowering ones. He was repeating these new soundtracks daily, and over time, they were becoming more natural. But something still felt missing. Although Robert had started to think more positively, his self-talk, the way he spoke to himself in tough situations, was still filled with doubt and criticism. The moment he faced a setback or a challenge, his inner dialogue would spiral. Thoughts like, "You're not good enough," "You can't do this," or "Why did you even try?" would flood his mind, making it hard to stay focused or motivated. That's when Acuff dropped another valuable insight. Self-talk is not just something you have, it's a skill you can build. Robert realized that his negative self-talk wasn't a permanent fixture. It wasn't a part of him that he had to just accept. Just like replacing a soundtrack, he could change the way he spoke to himself. Self-talk, he learned, was a skill, one that could be improved with practice. So instead of letting his negative self-talk derail him, Robert began to intentionally practice positive self-talk in moments of struggle. It started small. When he felt doubt creeping in, he reminded himself, "I've overcome challenges before. I can do this again." Initially, the positive self-talk felt unnatural. It wasn't easy to override years of negative patterns. But Robert kept practicing, and slowly his self-talk began to shift. Instead of automatically defaulting to "I'm not good enough," Robert learned to catch himself and replace it with "I'm capable of growth, and this challenge is an opportunity to learn." The key here wasn't perfection, it was progress. Every time Robert chose to replace his negative self-talk with a more empowering statement, he was reinforcing a new habit. Over time, this practice allowed him to build a strong foundation of positive self-talk that he could rely on, no matter the challenge. It wasn't about silencing the negative self-talk completely. It was about choosing to respond with a more helpful and encouraging message. Robert realized that the more he practiced this, the more automatic it became. Self-talk is a skill you can develop, and the best way to do so is through consistent practice. Start small by noticing the negative thoughts that pop up during your day. When you catch them, consciously replace them with a more positive, empowering message. For example, if you catch yourself thinking, "I'm not good enough," replace it with, "I am capable and I am learning every day." The more you practice, the easier it will get, and the stronger your positive self-talk will become. Self-talk is a skill, not a trait. With practice, you can build the habit of positive self-talk and change the way you respond to challenges and setbacks. Lesson number 5. Protect your mind from outside noise. As Robert continued his journey, he started to see massive shifts in his mindset. He was learning how to replace negative soundtracks, how repetition helped those new tracks stick, and how self-talk was a skill he could develop. But as he grew stronger, something else became clear. The external world was still full of distractions, criticism, and noise that threatened to pull him back into old thought patterns. Jon Acuff's message in Soundtracks hit home here. You can't protect your mind from everything, but you can control the volume of what gets through. At first, Robert didn't fully realize how much outside noise he was letting into his mind. It wasn't just the direct negative feedback from others, it was the constant barrage of information, opinions, and expectations that flooded his daily life. Social media, news, the pressure to keep up with peers, it all started to feel overwhelming. Every time Robert checked his phone or logged into social media, he found himself bombarded by comparisons and conflicting advice. He'd scroll past posts of people living their perfect lives, achieving things that Robert felt were out of his reach. The more he let this noise in, the more it chipped away at the progress he had made in his mindset. This external noise wasn't just affecting his emotions, it was affecting his mental clarity. He was no longer focusing on his own empowering soundtracks, but was instead listening to the louder, more chaotic tracks of other people's opinions and expectations. That's when Acuff's advice about protecting your mind became so crucial. You don't have to let every voice in. You have the power to decide which voices you let influence your thoughts and beliefs. Robert took this advice seriously. He began actively protecting his mind from the noise. For him, this meant setting boundaries around his social media use. He started unfollowing accounts that triggered comparison or self-doubt, and instead followed people who inspired him or aligned with his values. But it wasn't just about social media. it was also about the people in his life. Robert realized that the more he listened to the opinions of others, especially those who didn't support his growth, the more his own thoughts became cluttered with uncertainty. So he started being more selective about who he allowed into his inner circle. He chose to surround himself with people who uplifted him, not those who brought him down. One of the most powerful practices Robert adopted was creating mental filters. When a negative thought or external voice popped up, he would ask himself, "Does this serve me? Does this help me grow?" If the answer was no, he would consciously reject it. Protecting your mind from outside noise starts with awareness. Pay attention to what you're consuming, both from the people around you and the media you engage with. If something isn't serving your growth, learning, or well-being, make the conscious decision to reduce your exposure to it. Here's a simple exercise to try. Set aside 10 minutes each day for a mental cleanse. During this time, avoid social media, news, or any external distractions. Instead, focus on what serves your growth. You can meditate, read a book that inspires you, or listen to a podcast that aligns with your goals. Protect your mind by filtering out the external noise. You don't have to let every opinion or influence in. Choose the voices that align with your growth and set boundaries around what you consume. Robert's journey of transformation wasn't immediate, nor was it without struggle. But the changes he experienced were profound. It all began when he made the decision to take control of his mind and break free from the negative soundtracks that had been holding him back. When Robert first picked up soundtracks, his life was filled with noise, external pressure from the world, and internal chatter that told him he wasn't enough. The constant doubts, fears, and insecurities were overwhelming. Every day felt like a battle against himself, and the more he tried to push forward, the more he felt stuck. His mind was full of limiting beliefs, each one feeding into the next. But as he began reading, he learned that these thoughts weren't truths. They were just soundtracks, looping over and over, playing in the background of his life. The first shift came when Robert understood that his thoughts weren't permanent. Soundtracks were not fixed, they could be changed. Realizing this was liberating, Robert began to replace the old, disempowering tracks with more empowering ones. Instead of hearing, "You're not good enough," he started to replace it with, "You are capable of growth, and you're on your way." This was the first step toward his transformation. However, change didn't come easily. Robert faced moments of doubt, frustration, and resistance. Every time he tried to shift his thoughts, old patterns would resurface. But as he continued practicing the lessons in the book, something powerful began to happen. His mindset started to shift. Not overnight, but gradually. He began to feel more hopeful. He started to see the possibility for change, and with that hope came action. When Robert embraced the second lesson, that discomfort is essential for growth, he shifted his entire approach to challenges. Before, he'd been avoiding discomfort, thinking it was a sign that something was wrong. But now, he saw discomfort as a sign of progress. Each time he faced something uncomfortable, he leaned in. Instead of retreating, Robert leaned into the discomfort, knowing that growth happened on the other side. This lesson was powerful because it gave him permission to push through the hard moments, instead of giving up. The third lesson, curating his mental playlist, became a game changer for Robert. He realized that his mind was like a garden, and he needed to decide what thoughts he would water. It wasn't enough to just replace the negative soundtracks with positive ones. Robert learned that he needed to protect his mind from outside noise. He began setting boundaries with social media, limiting negative influences, and making sure he surrounded himself with positivity. This decision changed everything. His mental environment became a space of growth, not chaos. As Robert continued through the book, the lessons became more practical, more actionable. By the end of his journey, his mindset had completely transformed. He wasn't bound by the limitations of his past. He no longer heard the soundtrack of self-doubt. Instead, he played a playlist of possibility, growth, and resilience. The external noise no longer had control over him. He was the one in control. And this is where you come in. Just like Robert, you can change your own mental playlist. You can start by taking control of the soundtracks playing in your mind. It all begins with awareness. Take a moment to ask yourself, what soundtracks are playing in your mind right now? Are they supportive of your goals and growth, or are they keeping you stuck? Start by identifying the negative soundtracks and consciously choosing to replace them with empowering thoughts. Remember, it's not a quick fix, but with time and practice, you'll begin to see the shift. Embrace discomfort as part of the process, because every moment of discomfort is an opportunity to grow. And most importantly, protect your mind from the noise around you. Curate your mental space like a DJ curates the perfect playlist. The power to change your life is in your hands, and it begins with your mind. If you found Robert's journey inspiring and feel ready to start transforming your own mindset, take a moment to reflect. What soundtracks are playing in your mind right now? Are they lifting you up or holding you back? The first step is awareness. Once you recognize the tracks that are no longer serving you, you can begin to rewrite them. At Bookplay, our mission is to turn powerful books into powerful life changes. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll never miss a life-changing lesson from the books that can help you shift your mindset, overcome challenges, and reach your fullest potential. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. What steps will you take today to curate your own mental playlist? Let's continue the conversation and support each other as we grow together. Remember, the power to change your life is always within you, and it starts with the thoughts you choose to believe.